are tzir and yeshus, and that comes through the levels in the stalshlus, eir, and so on.
The hitkalilut coming from Atzmus, it's a factual thing, so to speak. You analyze the human body, the way nature works. You see the hitkalilut. But the idea that a yesh feels like a yesh, what's the heck to say? That comes from Atzmus. A person could lie to himself, upnaran. Why is that?
You want to hear? I discussed it before. The Alter Rebbe says this chiddush, and before the Alter Rebbe, they touched it. It's apparently they touched it that way, that the yesh, the fact that you feel you have no source, is a negative thing. Then that's what you have to work on, is to realize you do have a source and you do have a God. It seems, I always understood it, and again, I never saw it in the Sikha or anything, but my understanding of it is, because Chassidus sees everything, even a negative has to have a root somewhere in positive. The fact that we have a sense that we were not created, let me rephrase. The fact that such a fundamental part of existence is that it feels it has no source, the Alter Rebbe could not accept that just comes from the Yetzer Hara. Because how could
what's too big?
It's two things. It's so fundamental to existence, and it's so fundamental, and it could be the root of all evil if it's not tamed. So where did it come from? In other words, what Chassidus says that the fact that that it seems natural that you should feel that you're an extension that came before you. Your parents, they came before, and all the way to God. The fact that we don't have that natural feeling. So you could argue that's a hell of a hester, in the Yetzer Hara. But the Alter Rebbe clearly makes it clear that it comes from. Ultimately, in the bitter of it, it's definitely geschmacklich, because at the end of it means you're yeshus. That makes you feel you're self-made.
It's really
that itself is really Atzmus. When you come to discover that. So in other words, it's a real din of tachtenim. That even the yesh in you that completely will shale everybody else, because I'm self-made. That itself is really an expression of yesh amiti. It's ultimate achdus of elokus and welt when it comes down to it. When the yesh amiti becomes the yesh hanivra. Yesh hanivra becomes one with the yesh amiti. Anyway, the next chapter, we're going to go to 10 today. In the next chapter, Reish Ayin Zayin, he goes now back, because remember, he didn't finish the sugya here. He goes back now to where he began. Essentially, I'm not going to read this inside, I'll just sum it up. Here he essentially says that Shem Ma goes back on a lower level now, in Atzilus. Remember, so what we chadish now is that Atzmus is necessary for hitkalilut. The second element in tikkun. Not just that the eir, the energy tolerates one another, but they manifest in kelim, and the kelim work as one until they become literally one. That comes from Atzmus. So now he explains. That's what I said before. Here's how Eitz Chaim is a bir Chassidus. So here's how Kabbalah explains this in Chassidus. So Kabbalah says that the Shem Ma of Tikkun of Atzilus is rooted in the Metzach, in the forehead of Ak. So there's two things in the Shem Ma. There's the Etzem of Shem Ma, as it's rooted in Shem Ab. Remember the name 72 in the forehead in Ak. Think of it, before the glow emerges on the forehead, its root in Ak. That's Etzem of Shem Ma. And then the Shem Ma HaChodosh, the new Shem Ma it's called, that actually comes after the Bekiah, after the springs forth, after it breaks through. And
why do you say it was Chodesh? Because it was after the Tzimtzum?
Yeah, because after the Bekiah. That's the Chodesh, she says clearly, yeah. So, I know, yeah. And that's how Shem Ma comes into Atzilus. And that's the reflection. So the Chiddush now in this chapter is going to say that the reflection of Shem Ma, that creates that the Eidos should be weaker and tolerate each other. And the Etzem of Shem Ma brings down the Atzmus power, that the Kalim should be able to completely unite.
Say that again. Say that again.
So he's saying that the reflection of Shem Ma, as it's not Tzilus, that's what creates the weakening of the intensity of Teyu.
That's Mar Chodesh.
That's Mar Chodesh. That weakens the intensity so the energies can coexist, can tolerate each other. And the Etzem of Shem Ma, from Ab, that's what his power, which comes from Atzmus, Mamish, Atzmus, the real Atzmus, that gives power to the scholars of the containers that they can work together and to become like one.
So one is
So basically-
and one is godless?
Yeah, that's what clear, yeah. Said that earlier. For example, in our case, two things have to happen for a human body for the human being to function. One is that the soul, when God sends the soul down into the body, so the soul is a spiritual entity that has not been contained by a body. How's it going to fit into a body?
It's no form.
How's it going to fit into the body? We're not talking about to force it into the body. It's also going to function in the body. It's going to give the body life. And not just life, b'chlal, it's going to give the body vision and sound and hearing and taste, touch and smell and a heart and so on. So the whole beginning of the Hemshech, if you remember, was all about how the Eidos fit into the Kelim. So two things have to happen. The Eidos have to get weaker from the way they are in their etzem, or else they will destroy the body. They'll be like, think of the sunlight that just will blind us. Overwhelming, right? And the second, the Kelim have to be refined to contain these energy. In other words, for example, you can't just create a dummy, or a mechanical body, and it's going to be a keli for a neshama. So the kelim of the body are actually more refined than other containers, and actually that's what happens in pregnancy. The soul and the body are growing together. So the body begins very, very small and tiny. It develops. As it develops, more soul goes into it. As it's born, you have a healthy body that's a container for a healthy neshama, and that too goes through stages as we learn Ibur, Yunika, Meichen, which is maturity, how the mind and how the soul, mind, and body learn to adapt with each other. What we learn at the beginning of Tanya, the soul before it comes down is given the strength, etc., etc. So basically, two things are really happening: the energy of the neshama, of the soul's of the faculties, is weakening. In Toyu, they're too intense, and therefore, if Toyu came, then you basically have, God forbid, you'd have a situation where the energy was too strong for the containers. It would destroy by intensity. So you have to weaken that energy. That comes from the Shema Chodosh. In other words, after the Pekiah. That's why it comes. If the glow of the mind of Ab would shine through without any tzimtzum, without any helam, without any container, if you were able to see your teacher's face, not just the face, the glow behind it, you wouldn't be able to, look at Moshe Rabbeinu, I guess, when he came down from Har Sinai. They couldn't look at him.
Or even people that are geniuses, sometimes they have too much air. And they
exactly.
Water is insane.
So you need the weakening of that. That comes Shema HaChadosh. That's the Pekiah. That's the as he calls it, that's what diminishes it to the point that you can contain it in a form of dilug, like you used before the example of the sire, the hair, or the example of what was the other example of Pekiah? This morning, the morning dawn.
The reservoir.
Yeah, the reservoir, the barrel. The barrel that is just... So you're getting the essence, but that's only a reflection. Since it's only a reflection, that's what weakens the energy. And then there's the second thing, there's how it is in its root. And the root is what gives power to the kalim. This is the second thing that needs to happen, that the containers, not just... So you have, you have the energy diminished, but that's still not enough. You need a healthy body. So you need the containers to work with one another. And that is scholars happens from the etzem of Shema.
But that's why ultimately the body has more Atzmus, right?
Yeah, right. The body is more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because it's a time up here.
Yeah. That's chapter 277. Should I read it quickly? Why not? Huh? Yeah, let's read it already. I'll read it. Because then I'll give a small introduction to where it goes now. Because now he begins after this a whole new discussion. It's a whole new chapter for 26 chapters. He's going to discuss a whole new sugya, which is unbelievably geschmack, but it takes it to the next level. I'm reading Reish Ayin Zayin quickly here. In Shema, there's two levels: the etzem, the essence of Shema, and the reflection of Shema. The Shema, the Shema, as it comes after the breakthrough from the forehead of Ak. That's the reflection of Shema. It's only a reflection of Dilu, like he explained. Not reflection as, if you remember, speech also reflects the essence. It's actual reflection. Here we're not talking about a reflection. Here we're only talking, it's a form of maiver. If you remember, it's concealed. That's what reflection here means. Ha'ara is not the usual definition of reflection. Because it goes through a concealment, through a jump.
That's what the stage. What's the difference? In speech also.
But he spoke at length. He spoke at length. Speech, however, is more refined. It's not a physical.
But what about
Speech is
the
a
protrusion?
refined communication, and it doesn't go. It's not the essence as much as the forehead reflects.
Protrusion. The word protrusion. If something protrudes, you know that there's something there, but you can't see it. So it's like if it's really showing you that there's something there, but you don't know what it is.
I don't know if protrusion usually is like horns protrude from the head. You say.
That's the kanaya.
Yeah, but I don't know if you'd say that protrusion was the right word for
Yeah.
Maybe you could say it
When
protrudes.
I was looking at
Not
the
really.
sutta-
Protrude is probably more. I would say. Pekia sounds is more breaking through. What we say, breaking through, or
It breaks it, but it doesn't actually
Springing
come
through.
through. The actual thing doesn't come through. It's still actually behind the concealment.
right. But something. But it's like the wine in the barrel that.
Is it true to say that the real concealment is the dealing part, not the hell? Deeper also is hell, but the breakthrough.
Yeah, but it's more concealment than, let's say, dibur than speeches. Atzmi. I mean, really, this is all discussed in previous chapters. I would definitely recommend everybody go through it if you really want to get it. So even though it's an essence, it's still called ha'ara because it's not the etzem the way it is on its own. Like we learned in not the previous, but Reshayin Hey, like a kumay b'teir shabiksav. That's you sense mitzias of Atzmus, but it's not Atzmus itself. Like in Teir Shabiksav, in the written Teir, you sense that something is higher, mitzias of Atzmus of Elikus. And mitzias is only a reflection as it's known. But now, what's Shema? Etzem Shema, B'chinas Shema, Kedem Abkiya, B'chinas Atzmus Shema. But Kedem Abkiya, before it protruded, before it broke through, before it pierced. Pierce is a good word in my opinion here, because piercing, like for example, more about Eira Shachar Shachar. So it's like it pierces through. So you get something from it. You're getting something from
when
within.
the sun comes out from the horizon, it's actually protruding a little bit from like behind the clouds or behind the mountains, whatever it is. It's interchangeable actually, because sometimes the taka does mean piercing, and sometimes it means not the whole thing.
Okay, so Kedem Abkiya is Atzmus Shema, Sharizel Etzem Kamei Shehu. So here's the Etzem the way it is. But remember, we said, let's just think about it again. Where the light comes from, the light of the face, the forehead, the glow on the face, like when Moshe Rabbeinu had to cover himself, where it comes from, where it originates, we don't even have a clue. How come? What intensity is there? So that's how it is. The etzem kameshu. Whom b'chinas shem abda'ak u'kanal perek Reish Samach Gimel. That's where it began this whole discussion. So Reish Samach Gimel is finishing now. 263 is finishing in 277. What is that? 14 chapters. That's 263, 277, right? 14 chapters. But Yesh Leimer, now he goes, here's the Yesh Leimer. The Iskalus we talked about from the containers, that's from Atzmus Shema. What's the meaning behind it? See, so his mamish how Eitz Chaim is a biur Chassidus. I think it's gewaldig. Eitz Chaim is Chassidus tells you the way it's in the source, and Eitz Chaim is bringing it down on a lower level. So Atzmus, so Shema is kamei b'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof. In Yedua, the Tevis Ma, and here he's going to bring it down how Ma is both. So what we're basically thinking of, remember the hologram example. I mean, Atzmus is Atzmus, but for the interface to work in Ishtalshlus, you have to have within Ishtalshlus also reflections of this Atzmus. So he's going to explain how Shema is a combination of these two elements. It exists and it doesn't exist at the same time. It's both. So we spoke before. It's there. The word ma tolerates or contains, carries two opposite things. Echad, ma losh muhus. Ma losh muhus. Muhus means what is it? It's something, it's a muhus. It's an entity. Kumay mahu. Like when we say kumay mahu, what is it? So there's an it. You don't say it doesn't exist, you say there's what is it? Vav Beis loshen heder hamuhus. And the same ma has an opposite meaning. That's lack of muhus. Ma pishpashto. What? What have you? How would you type pishpashto? What have you?
Research. Yeah. What do you find out?
What you already? Yeah. Ma. It also could be dismissive. What do you think you are already? You know. Look who thinks he's nothing. Look who thinks he's nobody. The hainu the in habitl the ma ain't begins heder metzias legamri. Amahus legamri. In other words, the bitl of ma, if it only had the second interpretation, it would mean it's nothing. Ma, however, is not heder mahus legamri, complete non-existence, annihilation of the mahus. Hain shelo yesh klas metzias dover. It's not the meaning that there's nothing there. Ki'im sheyesh mahus metzias dover. It means there is something there. A mahus and a metzias. In the Rebbe, in Tav Shenal, the Rebbe differentiates mahus and metzias, just for the record.
Yeah.
Mahus comes from the word mahu. What is it? It would mean like the quality of it, the personality. It's almost like form and function. And metzias is what is its, how does it manifest? Its shape and form. That's what he calls it. Almost like, not chaymer and surah, but similar. So mahus is like you say, the metzias of a table is made out of wood. It's this and this size. It can contain weight a certain amount. It can be used for these purposes. The muhus of the table will be it's made out of its what its function is. So it's like form and function. Like in design, when you say tell me the function, then we'll create a design for it. So here we have mehus mitzias, who begins bittul betachlis b'lishum mehus mitzias ba'atzmei klal klal. At the same time, it's completely bottled, but ultimately bottled, without any mitzias, la'atzmei klal klal. It has no existence of its own at all. So, something that annihilates something else, that's bli heder mahus. Something that's just a mahus, and doesn't have the heder mahus, there's no bittul.
So it's a mahus without a mahus.
Do you see like
Exactly.
light and dark? I mean, the absence of light is the dark, or the dark
I
is
don't
itself
know.
a creation. That's exactly what he's trying to say here.
I wouldn't say that here at all. How
He's
does
saying-
that connect?
Because an shleish we see is davar, but it's not. I mean, heder mahus legamri an shleish mitzvah klal is davar. No, kim sheish mahus mitzvah davar.
You know, moshel has to be one that explains the mishal. I don't see your moshel is more
Why?
complicated.
Why not? There's machlekes.
Well, first of all,
If
why not?
Chesed
First
has
of all,
it-
because the Rebbe Rashab would bring it if it was so
okay,
nice.
fine, yeah.
Secondly, what is it adding? He's going to give an example. He's going to give Moshe Rabbi. He's going to do between Onov and Ashafel.
Okay.
Shekenu amitisin habitl the tikkun k'meshes. Boy, this is the real bitl of tikkun. Remember, let's go back to the body. What he said in the previous chapter. Why do you need atzmus for hitkalilut? Why can't hitkalilut? Yossi, the chiddush was
I lost you. What is the be'atzmai? How do you type the be'atzmai?
for atzmei.
What do you mean? What would have missed if you would have said bleed the word be'atzmai?
Bishum husu
Yes,
mitzvahs.
mahus mitzias dover. Who becomes bittul betachlis bishum mahus mitzias. What's the be'atzmai?
And my understanding of atzmei here is mitzad atzmei. In other words, if we would say ba'atzmei, you'd say then it stops existing. You exist, but you know that you're a complete extension of something beyond you. That's what Pashtus what he means here. Because how is it possible? Look, he's not just saying, so it's not just time he's talking some type of fantasy world. Something is a muhus and not a muhus. So the answer is not a muhus on its own. But here's the key. Remember the chiddush, you weren't here, but listen. The chiddush is that bittul doesn't just come from, you could think the yesh comes from Atzmus. And the bittul comes from Meir.
Right.
He said, no, the bittul
Yeah,
comes from Atzmus also. Because what the reason is, because you want a bittul in existence. You don't want a bittul that's just bittul. If a bittul came from Eir, we ultimately would have to somewhat give up something about our individuality and personalities and our shape and form. Because Eir does not tolerate shape and form. Remember, limited shape and form, defined shape and form. Only Atzmus, that has no definition at all, no Hagdara, can tolerate definition. In other words, a definition as in a limited and limited defined entity like us. So here's the same thing here. That's why the bitl of Shem Ma is like the bitl of Atzmus. It's Ma, bli muhus, but in the muhus. He's going to explain it. The Moshe is a good success. For example, so Kamei Moshe Rabbeinu Shahay B'chinas Mitzias. Moshe was Mitzias. How do we know? Shari Darki V'Hiluchi B'Keidim Shahay B'chinas Tam V'Yediyah. Because you see, it's an interesting expression, darke ve'eluche. The way his path, the way he walked, his darke, his derech, his path, ve'eluche, and his walking, his bekodesh in holiness, was with tam idea. He walked with a structure, with a logical, with a organ, tam, I guess, reason and understanding. Hashem lo mehiresa, adnei lo mehiresa. Like explained somewhere else, the fact that he tied it to the Eibishter, why are you doing evil to these people, means
Logic.
he was logical. He was an entity outside of God, challenging God. No, and at the same time, he was completely bittul, without any mitzvahs ba'atzmei.
Again, you could argue with the Eibishter.
Klal at all. Like it says, v'nochnu ma. Moshe was two psukim. One of the Moshe was Anav Ma'ed, was the humblest, and Nochnu ma, again, the word ma. L'chein hayu b'chinas kli, the Ein Sof shekibel b'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof. And that's what Moshe was a keli for Ein Sof, and he received from Atzmus Ein Sof. Moshe kibel teira, v'omad al omdei, and he didn't lose himself. He stood his ground. Stood, like it says about his about the nevuah. When Moshe, his nevuah was awake, and he was we say about the Gedai, he was not just sober. He was
Bahakit, it wasn't like when he fell on his face.
Right. What's the expression? He was lucid. Hein b'nishmasei v'hein b'gufei, both his soul and both his body. Like it says, that God's, I will speak to you face to face. I'm sorry, mouth to mouth, but meaning that like two friends speak to each other. That's only possible because of the hiskalos of these two opposites. And this is the difference. This is between honor v'shafel. This is between honor v'shafel. Shafel is she'en b'chinas mitzias klal. This is if it didn't say ba'atzmei. A shafel, it was chal not a mitzias. Kim b'chinas bittul b'chinas heder mitzias l'gamri. It completely doesn't exist. Interestingly, here he's not, usually shafel touch negatively, low self-esteem, shmata.
Well,
It includes this, but here he said, even in a positive way, if someone too much spittle, like sometimes it speaks like the guys like a what do you call a walking a scoop in the dresses, people walking them a doormat, yeah. Of honor who should begin mitzias, who begins bittul mitzias legamri. There's a mitzias, and at the same time is bittul mitzias legamri. Sometimes the way it's explained is, like, a person with no self-esteem doesn't think he's anybody. I'm nobody. Moshe knew he was somebody. Moshe knew that Hashem chose him. He knew he had keiches. He knew if he believed in God, like the Rebbe told the Rebbe Shlucha, that you're questioning the one who sent you. Because the fact that he believed, God chose him to commit. So in the beginning he argued with Abish, I shouldn't be the shliach, and all the reasons. Bottom line is he knew who he was. But Chassidus says in other places, not here, that two things. He said to himself, if someone else was, first of all, it's not me. Hashem gave me these keiches. He never deluded himself to thinking he's self-made. His milas were his own. And the second thing he said, if someone else was given the same abilities, they've done better than me. Basically, if he was Batal B'Ganson, he could say to God, listen, I can't go do this, I can't do that. Now it's true, there's certain places it says, Ayin Beis, there's a certain place, I can't go to Pare, etc. But that was not because of, because first of all he was getting keiches from the Eibush, and then he ended up doing it. It wasn't because of, if he was a shuffle, he would not be a leader. He'd not say Ma'ayim. He wouldn't say Lama Yeresa. He wouldn't be an entity. His beauty was that he had all these keiches. He had a completely bottle. Essentially, the best way I think that one of the ways to explain it is a channel. You have the faculties. You're there, but all you are is a complete channel. The Rebbe speaks in the levels of shlichus. That the lowest levels of shliach, you're just doing the job for someone else. Second is your hand becomes his hand. And then becomes that you become completely, the fourth level, the fifth level, you are the Meshaleach just a reincarnate. Essentially, Mishalech, embodiment of the Mishalech, and going there. But the interesting thing with the Shliach is the same thing. You need to be a bar das b'fnei atzmei. An Eved can be a Shliach, a Ben can be a Shliach. It can't be somebody that you've hired. It can't be someone who's rented or leased. It has to be a person who is a bar das, not a sheit, a cher sheit v'katan. It has to be a bar das b'fnei atzmei, an independent entity. That's why there's an argument with Eliezer when Avram sent him whether he was a real shliach. Some say he was like a shatchin, not a shliach. The Rebbe speaks about it. So a shliach is some complete independent entity that says, I am going to completely do what you want me to do, not my own. So there's a famous story. I think it's Mamish captures what he says here. I forgot who it was. The chassid of Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek couldn't go to a sifa. He used to go to Petersburg to do things for the government, to deal with government issues, to make life a little easier for Jews. He couldn't go once, so he chose a chassid to go. I forgot the chassid's name. So the chassid asked, Rebbe, what should I do if I have a suffix, if I have a doubt? So Tzemach Tzedek said, if you have a doubt, boy al das atzmei. Reflect and boy. Those boy. Huh?
Use your own head.
Beis Aleph?
Beis Vav Yud. Yiddish. Boy.
Oh, Yiddish.
Binyan. As we be boyim. In other words, I don't remember the exact lashon, but that's a teichen of it. He says, in other words, determine based on your own daya. The Rebbe Marash was in the room b'shas ma'is, and he said to himself, okay, this chassid has a little problem. Das atzmi. What means a chassid has das atzmi? So he thought to himself, he didn't say anything. He thought to himself that the chassid is like, okay, he's one of these overgeklert type that has his own way of doing things. But then came Shabbos, and so in the middle of the meal, the Tzemach Tzedek, this is printed, this story. Tzemach Tzedek gets serious, and he's thinking. He said, I forgot the name, he said, Rabbi Osher, or whatever it was, Matatzech in Peterburg. This chassid is struggling with a problem in Petersburg. And then a few minutes passed, and the Tzemach Tzedek smiled, and he said, good, at mechaven gewen. The moment he came to the conclusion, he was mechaven the way I would have done.
My father the same thing, My father.
Let me just say the end of the story.
Yeah.
So then Marash realized, the opposite. He's a greater chassid. But if he had no das atzmei, he's not a puppet. What's the chiddush? That he had das atzmei, he was an intelligent person and reflect and had many things to say and thoughts, and still he was able to align himself, that his seichel, not his bittul kabbalah sale, his seichel should be aligned.
His mitzvahs should be aligned.
His seichel should be aligned. So if you have the person is not a bar seichel, is the Rebbe's man is one thing. The person should have seichel and they should choose, and actually not just choose. They train themselves. What would the Rebbe do in this situation? And they do it that way, and not because they think one way. It's also in the game. Not they think one way and they say, you know what? I think this way, but the Rebbe would do it different. I'm doing it different. They actually change the way they think. Their mind solves problems the way the Rebbe would solve them. That's the ultimate Talmud of Rav, where the Chushei HaTalmud become Chushei Rav. So it's much more. You could say it's more risky, more gamble. It could be mistakes you can make, but that's the kavanah. It should be a mitzias, and that mitzias should.
So the ultimate interface is really a shliach.
Absolutely.
The ultimate interface.
Absolutely. Shliach is shema in the lower in biyah. This is not silas, and it's all from Atzmus. And the power comes from Atzmus because you really have that ability to have both.
When my father came back after 10 years of shlichus, the Rebbe and Yechidus told him, "Jetzt man nicht sein als
13 years. He told me this bar mitzvah. That's why.
Ah, yeah? Oh, so you know better. I don't remember the exact lashon.
No, go ahead.
But something to that effect. Jetzt man nicht sein als a
Mit
kid.
the hench.
The kid, it won't be anymore like a kid that, Sacharang tracht in Chabad, I don't know, something like that. Dus Sacharang tracht in Chabad, is to mechaven zijn was ik...
And your father did not feel good about that. Right? He'd prefer.
Well, I'm not quoting exactly, but to that effect.
No, and kachava.
It was the 13 years and he told me. It was like a bar mitzvah thing.
Well, then I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a story with myself. First of all, after Gimel Tammuz is extremely relevant, and you can see there are people. I mean, there are a lot of unfortunately not, but you have to ask yourself that question. Something comes up. What would the Rebbe say in that situation? And we're talking about al-piseichel, not just kafir. What would be the Rebbe's wisdom in this situation? What would be his
Bring the letters, bring the sichas. Everybody wants to say, show their way, so they show the Rebbe something like this.
Yeah. You remind me of a guy after Chazorah came over to me, a guy years ago, I don't know where he is. And he says to me, I see he's very, very agitated. He says to me, can you find me a sikh where it says that a wife has to listen to her husband? It was like 11 o'clock at night, 770. Only people there were Chazorah, who's there at 11 o'clock at night, especially looking for such a sikh. So I said, I don't know such a sikh. He said, what do you mean? You know the sikh? I know sikh is the opposite. That it says a husband should listen to a wife. That's shulchan aruch. Chabad ishtei yesem agufe. You honor your wife more than yourself. She said, what are you talking about? I said, is this about you? He says, no. I have a friend. So I realized since it's about a friend, not him. So I said, so let me tell you something. Since it's not you, I can be blunt. Tell your friend that he should go home and listen to his wife and stop looking for sichas. What are you going to do? Dangle a sikh in front of his wife and say, hey, the Rebbe and me think that you should listen to me. Is that what you did? She started yelling at me. It's like the story of the Rebbe Marash. Why are you sending somebody?
Yeah, so tell your friend.
He could have come and told me a friend. Anyway, the point that what happened with me, this is Baal Leischot, non Beis, non Aleph. It was the last Baal Leischot that Rebbe would speak. And the Rebbe spoke this theme. It was a very common theme, that Shalhevas Elam Elah, that the Kohen has to light the flame till it rises on its own. And what's the reason? Why does he have to? Why does he have to wait? Change Baal Leischot. Should have said Baal Lukeshcha. Rashi says to kindle Baal Leischot to raise, because it's so important. Because the foundation, the Rebbe said, the Yesod in chinuch and hashpah, in education, hashpah, and in influencing people, is that not just to ignite them, but to make sure they rise on their own. V'himidu talmidim harbe. That's the himidu, that they stand on their own feet. That even when the teacher is not there, they're basically the very common theme, very powerful theme. That not just to teach a student knowledge, but to teach them skills, methodology. So even when they're on their own and the teacher is not there, they will resolve the issue. They have the tools, not just the answers.
How to fish, not to fish.
Huh? Yeah. Okay. And the Rebbe went to it was a very deep sikha, because he went into the whole thing with Bechira. Because on one hand it says in Medrash, Mi Yagdamani Vashalim, that the Eibishter had to give us the cloth to make a mezuzah, to give us the ability to write a mezuzah. So basically he gave us everything, including the mitzvahs. So is it really us on our own, or what? So we went the whole thing with Bechira, free will. Do we really have free will? And he asked the question, at the end of the day, if the Kohen didn't light it, it wouldn't rise on its own either. So it's really not on its own. It's not like it suddenly a flame lit on its own. Someone lit it. Okay, so now it's burning on its own. So that was going back and forth. Is it, how much of it is on its own? How much is it getting koyach from something else? Interesting. But it was complicated. I remember it was not clear. So I asked some questions to the Rebbe on Sunday. I asked some questions to explain it. We wanted to get it exactly right. How much of it comes from. Obviously, the point is that it comes, the parent, let's say, gives the child, but then the child does rise on his own. There is an element of Aved B'Koyach Atzmi. Even the Eibishter gave us life and health. That doesn't mean we don't have anything that we earn in our efforts. And the Rebbe, the only time ever, he wrote on the side, he said the whole teichem of the theme of the Fabrengen was to Shalhevas Elam Eleh. You're asking me to answer your questions.
Figure it out.
Yeah, and I bothered me because the Rebbe always answered. I didn't want to have my answer. I wanted the Rebbe's answer. But I always think about it, and especially being that it was the Baal Leischot Nun Aleph, I always think that the Rebbe didn't just answer. He answered something that was more than was for years to come as well. And the Rebbe didn't mean to say, God forbid, answer your own. Das Atzmi, like with it. He meant think about it and you'll figure out what I meant. Obviously, that's the whole point. But you have to huddle it. So, and there's no question in my mind that's much harder. It's much easier. The Rebbe just gave it to us on a platter. But that's Mehusa built. There's no question. That's the combination of the two. Okay, so let me just. I'm going to read. Ayin Beis Hofchin. These are the two opposites. That from the Shleimus Atzmus, there should be both things: the individual levels and the total unity. And interestingly, this in a way is even deeper than Atzmus. Because Atzmus, he said, there's no Metzias and no Riboy Chas V'Shalom. And here there is actually Metzias and Ribui, and still, and still there's Atzmus. V'zeu b'chinas. I know we said 10. We're gonna.
No, you can stay. After that, a brisk question. You stay as long as you want.
V'zeu b'chinas. I'm gonna just finish this paragraph.
Stay as long as you want.
I have to also go. V'zeu b'chinas Atzmus Shema sheboy. B'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof. And this is the Atzmus of Shema, that in it lies the Atzmus Ein Sof. So now he's explaining how that Atzmus Ma. So he says.
It's on. When you finish, just turn it off.
Why do you turn it off?
Press this. Okay. Press this. Okay? And then power off. This. Okay?
V'yesh levayre inyan al pi ma shekos b'mokem acher b'inyan eson ha'ezrochi. That's Ab. Okay. We'll understand this according to what he explains elsewhere. Eson ha'ezrochi. What's the original meaning of Eson ha'ezrochi? In the Avram Avinu, right? But Ezrochi is what? I mean, I know that all the Berurim Chassidus.
Ezrachi means the native.
Ezrach. Yeah.
So that's why it's also the Lashon Yasham.
So Eson means the ancient native, basically. Eson Ezrachi is ancient native, talking about Avram Avinu. So Chassidus makes a whole thing about Eson Ezrachi. Shezau Shem Ab v'nikra Ezrachi miloshen Ezrach ha'aretz. That it illuminates, it radiates, right?
No,
No,
that's what it said, the native.
The native of the land.
Yeah.
The Haynu.
Oh, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Both things. Nikra Ezrach miloshen Ezrach ha'aretz is the native of the land. That means he's a native. He's not a immigrant and a newcomer. Indigenous. An indigenous entity. That's what Shem Ab is. Very nice. Did you know Shem Ab is an indigenous? It's an original.
Mizrach, yeah.
And that a native.
And both
Shema
nations,
Shema Chodesh. Shema is a newcomer, an immigrant, a new one. It became it was Nischadish. It was innovated through the Bikiyah, through the piercing, the mitzchadak of the forehead of Ak. That's where the Shema came from. U'kamei hakav, like explained earlier, the kav that comes after the tzimtzum, shenikra er mechudesh, it's a new light, new energy, p'nei shekodma heder, because heder precedes it, the vacuum precedes it. The void precedes, the hainu tzimtzum, the tzimtzum precedes it. U'ba, the bikiyas tzimtzum. The kav came through, breaking through, piercing the
It's
tzimtzum.
interesting that the Kav came out in David. I always understood the Kav went ahead and was became the Tzimtzum. He's saying here, Uba al Yidei, in other words, whatever pierced the Tzimtzum became a Kav after the piercing.
He explained it earlier. There's a whole paylik on it. He says basically, because the kav comes from Teferes Hanelam that pierces through the tzimtzum.
So that's at the point of the Bikiyah, it becomes a Kav.
Yeah. The same thing. Shema that comes through the piercing of the forehead is ischachus, it's new. Shema. That's the order, however. We're talking about now the reflection of Shema, not Etzem. Shema is a native. It's not new. It was from beginning and before. Even before things were created. We say Adein Elam. We also say, right? Adein Elam, Kedem. Terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. Kedem Achlei Nasa. Is there lotion somewhere?
That's what I'm trying to remember. Atu Achlei Nivra Elam, Atu Mushi Nivra Elam.
Kedem Achlei.
Could be Yagdil after davening. There's some people have a minute to say.
What do these v'chulos mean? That there's
In Yud Shvat Toshel Amid Zayin, the Rebbe said, without explaining, that you see some of the Rebbe Rashab, he has chulus everywhere, and the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he prepared the same Maimonides, he crossed them all out. The Rebbe didn't explain.
What
why.
do
You
you
prepare them for him to
Chulu
say
means
that.
etc.
You're right. But it means, does it mean like, as I said, somewhere else?
No, that would be
Or you
K'mosh
should
Kosim
not
Makamach.
have to know what I'm going to say?
Pashtus, it means that everything here has a more to the sentence.
You could
Because it doesn't say one chulu, it's like literally every line.
You can expound on it. Wherever there's a chulu, you can expound on
You could
it.
expound it, or it's expounded upon somewhere else.
When you're learning it,
Rebbe
you can
crossed them out
expound
with
on
his Maimonides.
You could.
When he said this,
There
it's
is
this
what to be
Maimonides.
expanded upon.
Yeah, you
Or
can discuss
wrote
it.
it,
At this
he
point,
would
you can
take out
discuss
the
it.
chulus.
I think that's what I think Yichulu is.
Even though he just wrote the same words, he didn't extend.
Right.
It's a good point. It's a good point to
Exactly
discuss it. I think that's what the Chulum
When
means.
you say he wrote the same words, because the Friedrich Rebbe said the Maimer also?
No, when he rewrote, sometimes he rewrote complete pieces. There's my
After
mother
that
that
Rashad's Maimer.
yeah, but he took out the chulus. You could see that.
Okay.
It means it's unique to the Rebbe Rashab. Even though the Rebbe Rashab is a harchova, Sheikh Meir, he explains things very. I assume that everything has more to say in each one. Like if we really were real chassidim, every chulu we'd be sitting and struggling. What is
That
this?
would be after the second time we finished learning it. Then the third time we started struggling with the chulus.
Yesh leim dezel k'may b'chinas atik ha'atokas ha'atzmus. Yesh leim, this ab, which is not machudish, is like atik. Remember, atik also means ason, old, ancient.
Right.
Hatokas ha'atzmus, but atik from the word hatokas ha'atzmus, how it's removed, beyond. Like it says elsewhere, the chitzeni savak is the arich of the general worlds. But primis hakam b'chinas atik. B'shema b'zo b'chinas atzmus hakam b'shkosa
So
b'etzchayim.
that's what we asked when we learned this. Is Pnimi Yisak and Atzmus the same thing? Or is it two different madregas? In other words, the Shem Ab and Atik, are they two different things or are they the same? Yeah, Pnimi Yisak is Atik, Shem Ab is Atzmusak.
In other words, the three madrigas.
So is it three madregas or is Pnimi is...
Well, earlier he did speak about three madregas.
So Ab is higher than Atik.
Hold on, no, that's not what I said. Earlier, I didn't finish my sentence. Before he spoke, this chitzenius ak, where whole seder shtalshus comes from. Remember, that's regular existence as we know it. There's the hevel, there's ezen chetem pe'av ak, which is pnimius ak, but not atzmus ak. And that's where dibur comes from, that's where sag and tayu came from. And then there's, where Shem Ma is rooted, ab, is atzmus ak, which is, compared to that, it's pnimius, even legabe the pnimius of ak, and it's kundasam, meaning it's like, yeah, and that is the metzach comes from there. So I would say in the context here he's not nochis lechalik. So here he's just speaking generally that speaks arich and atik. There is no besides atik. Here practically ab is atik. No, it's pnimius and atzmusak here go together. That's what I would say. If you break it down, there's probably in pnimius ak itself. There's the ezen chetem peh, and there's that's what he said earlier. Shema is b'chinas atzmus, v'zeh b'chinas atzmus shema kedem shebikeya, and this is shema.
Not Shema Chadash.
Right. This is the essence of shema that's before it's pierced. Like what he said before about the kav, like the feres hanelam. So the intensity is there. The intensity of shem. This is the essence. And this is from there is the root of the scholars of Kelim, because remember, he just said Atzmus of Shema is essentially Atzmus Ein Seif.
Essentially,
Has within, and that has within it Atzmus Ein Seif itself, which we learned in the previous chapter, is the root of the scholars of the Kelim to make them one. The scholars of the is Mitzad Atzmus B'chinas Ha'ara Shema Shabai De B'kiya. Because the Biskalus of Alkain, Biskalus, she is Chalishus Levat. Remember, it didn't create real unity, it only weakened the energy we discussed. She'enze Iskalus Amitis. Because if it came from Atzmus, it would be Iskalus Amitis. Or the other way around. To weaken the air, you don't need Atzmus. To weaken the air, all you need is a level that's more powerful in it, that overwhelms it, in a way, or diminishes it. Because Be'etzem, they're separate levels. Remember, in Tayu, there are separate levels, but they're so intense, they don't tolerate each other. So what you need here is so it's coming from that's why, because it's coming only from the reflection, it only creates a weakness. And essentially, there's separate levels. Is the Kalim that create the ultimate Iskalus and the Eris. I should add, remember, it's not just Eris and Kalim, it's the Eris themselves are weaker. The Eris then come into the Kalim, and the Kalim create a total symbiosis and total unity, but it's also a unity of the Eris in the Kalim. Remember, in the human body, it's not just the body, so it's the Eris in the Kalim. Like he keeps saying. And this is the ultimate shlemus, the ultimate perfection, the ultimate completion. What did we say shlemus was? How do we translate shlemus before?
Wholeness.
Wholeness. More than wholeness. Shlemus is perfection. The ultimate completeness. She's madreges protein, the details. V'akol b'chinas avdus mamash u'bli b'chinas reish safe, like in the
I
body.
can't rely on the old shot, it's shalom. There have to be two independent entities, that's the practice, but at the same time.
That is shalom. Shalom
That's
comes
shalom,
from Atzmus.
shalom.
Yeah,
That's the all.
it is. We spoke about first day, second day, third day, Yom Shlishi.
To make peace.
Yeah, but peace not in mediating where each one compromise, but they don't get, like in the body, they don't get compromised.
They retain their medrega.
Exactly, that's ultimate. You see, more often you say, for example, we say that a mediator, basically, okay, we got each one to compromise a bit, and everybody goes home happy.
Right.
Or maybe not completely happy because they compromise. This is a much higher level. There's no compromise.
Right.
Everybody is complete because he kept saying that their shlemus in themselves are also complete this way.
It's a win-win.
The fullest way. Not only win-win, you end up coming away. At the beginning, you two people are completely at war. They tolerate each other. They come away realizing that not only should I respect the other, without the other, I can't be complete. What I was fighting him about, now I need him for, because he makes me more complete, and me.
Even in business, competitors realize they can use each other.
Not only they can use each other, they need each other.
They need each other. Yeah.
Until one decides he wants to swallow them. And this comes from the etzem of Shema. This symbiosis, this iskalus, this interconnectivity, interrelationships of the kelim who gam kin al yedei. He's just qualifying, the interface has to be complete here. Is also coming through the energy sha'ir hu hamachayes akeli, or poel bli po habitl v'iskalus. Remember, I asked before the question. So what do you need air for?
Right.
Before we were thinking yesh, the yeshes comes from Atzmus. The bittul can come from air. So we said no, the bittul has to come from Atzmus because you need total unity. So what do you need air for? Because air carries this. Air, like it says in a lot of places that it brings it, that even the milo of the yesh, and let's say malchus, is rooted in Atzmus or in Keser, even that comes to it through the air. So the air does two things. It carries the power and reveals the power. Like Esav may have more power than Yaakov because it's like the body has more power than the neshama. But the body cannot reveal it on its own. The soul, it has to be bottled to the soul, and the soul reveals it into the body, and it carries it into the body and reveals it. That's what air
Earlier on in
does.
Maimer, he says that kalim come from Rishim. Nevertheless, the Rashab says, although the kalim originate from the Rishim, they come al yidei ha'oyer. In other words,
This is
the cake. The cake has ingredients. It has wheat, it has flour, it has eggs, but it comes through the fire. The poil, what's the cake made of? Flour and eggs. But the fire is what makes it into a cake. So the oil makes everything into his havas.
But the oil is nice.
Chassidus takes it further even.
The oil brings the kalim into his havas, but it's not.
Chassidus says.
The kalim is not the oil.
Chassidus says even further that the whole Ayin Beis talks about all the levels of how air does this. It goes air also carries the koyach Atzmus into existence because air is bottled. So it's like it says kadum kekadmuse. It carries built-in mitzias nimtz of Atzmus and its power of iskalus into the kelim also. But yes, it's not rooted there.
Like he says, the oil is mechayah the kalim.
So mechayes a kilo poil bo habitl v'iskalus, and it affects in it the bitl and the iskalus. Ach al yedei slapshus eres ben kelim dafke mischadish behem iskalus. Yeah, but it's not eir itself. It's when the eir itself is slabish and manifest inside the containers. That's when mischadish
It's almost like the oil is a
it's innovated in them.
Because the oil can't do it on its own.
And both ways, but if in hiskalus al coming mitzad b'chinas atzmus and stuff. Because remember, hiskalus is not just hiskalus hakelim one with another; it's also hiskalus eris and kelim. Remember, if eir is bligvul and does not carry bligvul, and kelim is gvul and doesn't carry bligvul, kelim need to be a keli also to the bligvul of eir, and eir is a keli to the gvul of kelim. So atzmus gives the power, but each of them carry, and they all come together. And this comes because Atzmus Ein Sof. So Atzmus Ein Sof gives the power to do it, but the process of how the method of how it happens is this way. excuse me, that's interesting. So Eidos get weaker by the reflection of Shema. As they get weaker, they can go into the containers. As they go into the containers, they reveal the containers. There's the root in Shem Ab, in the etzem of Shema in Ab, which is rooted in Atzmus. That creates a total unity. It's a very interesting picture. So before Tayu, it was just intense energies. All this didn't happen yet.
And this sense repeats itself throughout Hishtal.
Yeah. Viskalsu ba'eres ba'kelim. You see, the skals he's adding is ba'eres u'ba'hakelim, both. B'zedavke nishlam amitis hakavon al yena. And that's where the kavon al yena is. So in other words, for example, you could argue at the end of the day, if that's the case, la'asad lavi, Mashiach comes, what do we need a neshama for? The guf is atzmus. No, you need both. You need neshama and guf. So the B'chal, you say the Rambam says you need neshama without a guf. But then you can go to the other extreme, guf without a neshama. No. They both need it, they both help each other. And he doesn't explain it here, but throughout the Hemshech he does explain, because air contributes the remember, air contributes the revealed element of it. That it becomes part of who you are. Like remember we said the difference between metzach and speech. So metzach is not, you're not contained, it's not in, so relatively speaking, air has an element of revelation that Kalim don't have. Now he's mamish tying up the end of this section, and this is the main kavanah, ikar, the primary intention with the bittul of tikkun. The bittul diskalus inyan echad kaneda. Important rule: bittul and diskalus are one, as it's known. Because bittul causes diskalus, but he said more than not just causes. He says it's one. Interesting. So bittul. No, if you don't see a scholars, then it's a question of this bittul.
It's bittul is true. Bittul is a scholars. Otherwise, it's shuffle. Shuffle is not necessarily going to have a scholars.
Right. Lias madregas hametzias v'yibchins bittul metzias legamri. What does that mean? The combination of the two opposites. That it should be madrego hametzias. It should be a metzias, and it should be and that metzias should be bittul hametzias legamri. The loy b'chins heder legamri. Not it annihilated. It doesn't disappear. Like in shuffle, B'chinas bittul kol mitzvusam legami, that completely disappears. It's a mitzias, but like Moshe Rabbeinu. Or canal, but a bittul de Moshe, like the bittul of Moshe. V'hu ikar hefesh ben a bittul de tikkun la bittul de teyu.
Even when we say that Toyo has bittul.
He's going to say that. Shariat tefillah de teyu gam ken b'hem gam ken bittul. They also have bittul. He's going to say two key distinctions in the bittul of teyu. It's really a summary of what he said earlier. The two things before you read inside is that the bittul of Teyu is number one is a bittul that is absolute intensity, to the point of annihilating everything, and secondly it's a bittul that it's about their mitzias.
So the bittul Teyu is that they break apart, that they don't have mitzias. Is that correct? That's the bittul.
I didn't understand the bittul of Toyo what you just said.
We'll read it inside.
Yeah, you didn't say that. I don't think you said it yet, right?
The Hagamshin is parallel, the Tfilas and Teyu Hebchinis Yesh, even though we learned earlier that Tfilas Teyu Yesh, each one was a Yesh. Hinig Hayabem Bichinis had Bittel Gamke, they also had Bittel. Adrabah.
Did he mention this earlier, or this is the first time he's mentioning it?
He mentioned they had Bittel. He mentioned they had Bittel.
Not Baruchas is saying.
Yeah, but a little. I don't remember exact issues, but he definitely said they had Bittel because there was the whole thing with.
So it's not that they broke, that they're annihilated. That's not
Hold on. First, there's a bittul of Eris, there's a bittul of Kalim. Let's read it a moment.
Okay.
But Adrabah, bittul of Teyu, B'chinas is Galish Yesma, bittul de Tikkun. The bittul of Teyu is greater, is more revealed than the bittul of Tikkun. K'mesh kosmo k'macha b'inyin behema. Ba ma. V'odem b'gematri ma, hari b'Teyu, hari b'chinas ma, u bittul shalem b'chinas ma.
Behema, you see the ma bump in the words. In Adam, you have to make a
gematria. He says that, yeah. But it says clear. Behema bon ma, in it is ma. But Adam begematri ma. Hare, what does that mean? But tell you why b'chinas ma u bittul shalem bizgalus. Bon ma, within it is ma. Their ma and their bittul is revealed. But tikkun b'chinas ma begematri shu b'chinas helam.
I remember when I was a teenager.
And the ma in Adam.
They used to announce how
gematria concealed.
This chassid is so makusha to them, and this chassid is so. They used the titles of how bottled they are to them, and to me, it never made sense how it became a title and a way of describing a chassid of how bottled he is, or how it became a bittul like a bit.
Yeah, b'chinas mashu b'gematria b'chinas helam. Okay, so there's bittul. Let's just make one thing clear. Toyu is not an evil world. It's not a world of klippas. Toyu is a world of kedusha. Remember, akudim, nekudim, vrudim. Ak, akudim, nekudim, vrudim. Toyu is an evolution of energy, of elikus, that evolved from a level where there were 10 energies in one container, now it's 10 intense energies and 10 containers. So there's nothing hepach hakdusha there. There's no clip and so on. However, there's an imbalance. We spoke about the market correction, an imbalance maybe as a result of the tzimtzum. But there's an imbalance. What's the imbalance? In akudim, because the keli is so small, only one keli, there's also imbalance, but it doesn't create any problems because air dominates. In ak b'chlal, there's no keli, just for the record. There's the sherish keli, but there's no real keli. In akudim, the problem becomes now you're already beginning to the definitions. In akudim, there's one keli. Akud be clear. In the kudim, which is tayu, now the energy is not as intense. He says like chitzenius of akudim, but now containers. What's happening is an emerging of containers. But like, think of it like a child. So the child's having a tantrum. So there's already containers, and the containers are there, and the energy is there. So he spoke at length the difference between the two. The energy basically don't tolerate each other because they're too intense. The kelim, b'chlal, there's no mashpia makabel. There's no receiving and giving. So they're there, but the role of kelim really to create what kelim and tikkun will create, scholars, doesn't exist. So essentially what he's saying like this. So there's bittul. So why is there bittul? Because there's gedusha there. The air is bittul. The air is not air of it's not air of umazeh.
How does the bittul express itself in Torah?
Where do you see the bittul? Other than kind of knowing that
He doesn't say it here, but another man. No. For the fact, for example, the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, if they weren't with each other, they were very bottled to what they were learning. They were not into themselves.
To the Rav, but not to each other.
Yeah. The problem was that when they put them near each other, that's where the problem is. Nichve b'chapos shel chavere. So they themselves, they were not into selfish interests. They were learning, but it became so intense. So there's a bittul there, but it's a wild bittul. It's a bittul that doesn't have, like he says, it's not a pita kavan. Let's read it inside. So there's bittul. Remember, as soon as there's air, there's bittul. But remember, but it's not
in the sense that they were receptacles.
Receptacles to something greater.
Right.
Yeah, it's air. And remember, the air in Tayu is stronger than the air in Tikkun. Meaning that the air in Tayu is more air than it is in Tikkun. But it's not more kavana and it's not more the etzem. So let's read on. Okay. For example, let's talk about a behem and a adam. Who has more bittul? A behem has more bittul a behem is more powerful and can also be wilder. But a behemoth physically will subjugate itself to a human being. Human being won't subjugate himself easily to another. It's not saying that here, but I'm saying, yeah, so behemoth has a certain natural domestication. So he goes like this. Here you'll see a few things here. The bittul itself is in a level of yesh. It means it's about me.
It's contradictory.
It's about me. Not about God. It's about me. So the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, it's about me. Fine. So if there's no one else around, fine. There would be no destruction, but it wouldn't. It seems to be that's not a second thing, but that's the explanation. And it was not a bittul according to Kavan El Yena. Kavan El Yena is that bittul should be according to the way God wants, not about you. Not when you want to be bittul or when.
Doesn't this contradict the whole idea of the breaking of the vessels? If they're bittul, they can.
One second. We had this struggle before because he's speaking about Teyu here in more ways than just the breaking of the vessels. But let's just finish it. Remember, this is not the full analysis of Teyu. There's I think if I recall 5-6 chapters just on Teyu with Reimamus. Remember the whole. Since the etzem yeshus is the kedusha, fine. That's why the mitzias was very intense. It was very strong, very powerful.
Even the bittul is a takev a bittul.
And the bittul is also a takev. Intense. So it's two extremes here. The mitzias is intense. It goes one way or the other. The mitzias is intense, and when they're bottle, it's completely the other extreme. It's like a real fanatic. It's like an extremist. There's no balance. Either he's completely into himself, or he's completely ace himself. Completely gone. You know, we see people like that they have those extremes. And both. Take of mitzias and take of bittul, to the point of there's no mitzias, both are not the kaviyah. But tikkun habitl hu b'chinas bitl mamish. He calls it bitl mamish, real bitl, pure bitl. B'chinas hanochas atzmusei. It's not about me. I'm putting myself aside. Hanochas atzmusei. Put myself aside. Or bitl kol mitziyusei, and your whole mitziyus is bottle. Meaning not that your eis mitziyus completely. V'hi dafke k'fi mitzvah hakavon al yena. And that's the mitzvah again. So in a tikkun, two things are happening. Number one is it's not about you; it's about putting yourself aside what God wants. In a way, the energy of Torah, because it's so intense, it forgets, in a sense, the source. Because it's because in the air in Torah gets weaker, so it's not so much about itself. It senses the source more. That's number one, and number two, its bittul is not completely annihilating. It still leaves for a mitzias. Where this one is like a mitzias, and it's not a bit. It's a mitzias that's bottle, not a bittul that's.
So the only problem I have is a shvir sakil. You can leave that off.
No, shvir sakelim. You have to understand. First, you have to distinguish first of all. One second. So before we get to shvir sakelim, the eris don't tolerate each other. Because they're intense. That's not correct. The kalim don't receive or take from each other. Said the Yeshus, right?
Really goes into kalim.
Kalim, they don't receive or take from each other. That creates, that, and therefore there's no hashpah, there's no give and take in that sense.
So how do they have that bittul b'tekev? With Seder Yeshus, how do they have that bittul b'tekev?
It's Yeshus of Gedusha.
Great kalim. Like
It's
a genius. Great kalim for highlights. Is that what that's what we're talking about?
You could say that, but I
I
would.
don't want anything to do with you, you're stupid. I'm a great Kaylee for highlights.
Well, you have to go back to those chapters. I not to sum them up. The whole chapter is just on this discussion. What exactly the personality, but essentially, I would say the energy is more of its personality. The kalim is more doesn't. Kalim and tikkun, but he said earlier, is the eris and tikkun are there, but they're weak. I'm sorry, they're there, but they don't tolerate each other. Kalim altogether are not there. That's why they break.
The kalim not there.
See, we usually think in terms of shvir sakelim that the energy is so intense that it doesn't let the kalim. So they break the containers. It seems to be that the chaos in Torah is more complicated than that. The chaos in Torah begins even if there were no containers. The energies themselves don't tolerate each other. That's problem number one. Even if there were no containers. Problem number two is the containers don't all speak to each other. There's no relationship.
Right.
So bring that all together and you have shvir sakelim.
I don't get it. Because here the kalim are really, as I said, gesundte. They take really strong lights.
First of all, 1 second. First of all,
They're bittul. In the sense that they're
He's speaking about
total
the iris,
empty
not
to
about
this
the
light.
who says he's talking about kalim here? Maybe he's talking about iris. Who says he's talking about kalim here?
Maybe their bittul is that they're chesed and not gvura. The gvura is bittul is that he's gvura, not chesed. Maybe I'm just.
Well, no. As I said, we'd have to go back chapters and chapters earlier to really understand this properly.
You're right. You didn't use the word kalim.
I don't know if he's talking necessarily about
The
kalim.
bittul of Torah versus the bittul of tikkun.
In tikkun is the shlemus of eris and kalim. I think he's not talking necessarily about kalim. He may be talking only about eris.
He doesn't explain here. He just doesn't explain what about the take of a bittul is.
But he does explain it earlier. I told you. You want to go back?
Yeah,
You want to
okay.
really go? You got to go back to the earlier chapters.
Right. That's it.
There's a lot of details in it.
He'll explain how you can have the ultimate in Yeshus and still the ultimate in Bittul. Well, not the ultimate.
Yeshus, you misunderstand. Yeshus here has nothing to do with klippa. There's no evil here. Yeshus could be something that is a person's complete holy. Is yesh.
Yeshus means entity.
Yeshus means about me. That doesn't mean necessarily it's bad. As I said, the students of Rabbi Akiva, it's all about me. There was no room for anyone else. It wasn't in the bad things.
And still, there could be Bittul with such an entity?
That is bittul. They're bittul to God's will, to Torah.
The bittul was
But it's only about me. There's no room for anyone else's opinion. It's a person who's convinced this is God's way, and he's a holy person.
He's so bottled to the
Rabbi Akiva.
entertain another way of.
Rashbi came out of Rashbi came out of the cave, and whatever he looked at after 12 years burned. That's bittul. It came from his bittul, but it was not a containable bittul. It was a wild bittul. It was not the kavanah. He came out, whatever he looked at, it would be like somebody who's very, very intensely spiritual and divine, and just cannot tolerate anything that's not divine. So his attitude will be, he will burn everything up.
It's interesting what you're saying, because the closest he gets to it is Shari Hasfirus the Teo, so that could also be others.
It probably is
The whole
Eidus.
Ahem, what we're talking about is the
I'd have to look
Sfiros.
into it a little more, but it has to be Eidus. Let me just say one thing, and then we have to sum up, conclude. Right? And after this ends this whole section that was, I say, 14 chapters from Reish Samach Gimel till right here, that ends now with Reish Ayin Zayin. Yeah, 14 chapters. Reish Ayin Ches is basically 278. Is an entire chapter dedicated to explaining the answers to the questions on this particular mimer, Matis. It essentially says that Moshe is at some Shema, and that gives the power to transform.
It's the first time that we see the conclusion of the Bible has its own X number.
Yeah. And then begins, let's go to a moment to 564, the bottom. After you finish this whole Shema,
64?
564.
Wait, you don't want to do the kitzah?
See a revision of it.
So here he starts now. That's going to take, I think it's going to be 26 chapters. It's going to be a very fundamental discussion of the difference between Eir and Keli.
The only Chelik Aleph or goes to the Chelik Beis?
Only Chelik Aleph. It goes till chapter, let's see, 26 chapters. Would be
Last one is
Hey,
Shin Aleph,
Tzadik,
78, 88, 98, 04,
Yeah.
Shin Dalet.
right here. Yeah. It concludes on page 621, Tov Reish Kaf Aleph, before chapter Shin Dalet. Dalet Shin, rather, as he puts it. Dalet Shin. So the next 565 to 621, 35, 55, 56 pages, 26 chapters. It's all about Eir and Keli.
We didn't talk about that yet.
No, but he's going to talk about the real difference in Eir and Keli, the personality of Eir, personality of a Keli, and he's going to talk about 4 different ways of how their relationship could be distorted and 4 ways that it can be repaired. Which is going to be the difference in Tayyah and Tikkun. Which is maybe why he's not talking about Kelim and Eir here, because it's really going to come later. He says Kamosh is Bar. And that's going to explain, it's basically going to bring down this union of Shema, of Bittul, into understanding it in very specific details of how the energy and the container interact with each other.
Sure.
We realized an interesting observation last week. There's 144 Maimarim in Ayin Beis. That's Chelik Aleph and Beis. And there's a third Chelik which was never actually